Hi class, Dr. Gast here. This is week 1. We have chapter 1 that we're trying to review without a textbook. Some of you have it, some don't. So I want to just reiterate some of the concepts that we're talking in class at your leisure. Profit can seem like a bad word, but it's not. Some will say, well, profit is everything. Well, we have to balance it against consumers' needs. If we're simply going to go into business to make money so I can get rich, you're losing sight. There is a balance that goes on to say that it's not just about you, but you also have to look at, is this meeting a need for consumers? There's a really relationship that is evolving. So we look at what are the needs of consumers. If we talk about our standard of living, what is the standard of living? Is your standard of living better than your parents or your grandparents? And how would you evaluate that? Now, I can remember, this sounds really old, but my grandparents did not have an inside bathroom. They used an outhouse, meaning if you had to go to the bathroom, you went outdoors and into a little shed, a little building. Now they eventually got indoor. They had the indoor bathroom. Would you say that my standard today, I have more material things? So how we judge standard of living is an individual thing. On the other hand, we do want to talk about what you can purchase with the amount of money that you have. So one of the key sticking points with people is the cost of food at the grocery store. And many of you may experiencing. It's hard to purchase and maintain the same standard. Can you buy the same amount of food that you could 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Another measurement might be working at McDonald's. If you worked at McDonald's in 1960, you could raise a family. And that means that you would have shelter, you would have the ability to put food on the table and send your children to school. You can't do that today. So we would say the standard of living adjusted for someone working at McDonald's today. So we need to understand, respect standard of living is that it's relative. So I may make so much money here. What if I go to New York and work? It takes a greater amount of money to be able to buy the same things in New York. Is the standard of living higher? Well, it depends on what you can buy. It depends on what your income is. It's all relative. So when we talk about those types of relationships, and if you're going to, how much you're going to pay your employees, for instance, is relative. What can they do with the money that you're giving to them? So we'll be talking more in depth about these concepts, but you need to pick up on them when we talk about what do we mean by financial risk. You know, the higher the risk, if a company takes greater risk, they tend to reap greater rewards. And what we're looking for in that is economics and legal, because we may impose restrictions or incentives. It's not always negative. It could be saying the energy. Right now, there's federal energy reimbursement. So if you put solar panels on your house, you could be reimbursed up to a third. Yes, I think it's a third of what you spend on it. We have certain commands. I want to talk about this. There are 4 basic rights that a company in a capitalistic society, and especially in the US, our expectations are 4 things as a company. You have a right to own property. Now, not all countries can you do this. Number 2, we want to own the business and we want to keep the profits. Because think about capitalism. You can run a company, but you would then give the profits to the government. Freedom of choice. We have a freedom to choose. And then lastly, we have a right to compete, to have competition. These are indicators of our rights. We can expect in our country there is freedom to start a company. The government's not going to dictate to you, well, you can only make things for these people, or you can't do this, unless there are some situations such as harm, public harm, things of that sort. But we believe in free markets as Americans and keeping the restrictions to a minimum. And that's why there's a debate in Congress many times we look at what is the role of government, whether it's federal government, state government, local government. And most businesses say, well, we want to minimize, but yes, we want to protect. Now, let's take fire. The fires in the West. In LA, we experienced this horrific fire. And many residents were talking about that their insurance, homeowners insurance, was canceled weeks, months right before the fire. And it could be the insurance companies. Now they're in the business of looking at risk, and they're in the business of making a profit. So they calculate the risk. It could be that they were looking at, yes, we haven't had rain. There's going to be major problems if there's a fire. And so they start pulling out of the market. Now, federal government steps in and they impose regulations saying you can't cancel in certain zones because of the public harm to people. You may agree or disagree to that, but this is a role that takes place with saying what are the rights of the company and what are the rights of individuals. We can also look at supply and demand. Now, by the way, we're not just talking about wildfires. It could be a hurricane, it could be a tornado, it could be whatever tragic event is that you then have a situation that's much different than just operating regular business. We can then look at the supply and demand. I want to mention this on capitalism, and this capitalism, socialism, communism. And we would think that we are purely capitalistic. No, we also have a little bit of social, because we believe in making things. We might give discounts, for instance, to senior citizens for certain things, on and on. But those indicators, that's called what we call command market, is the government. When we get into communism, the government determines what's going to be produced and who's going to get it. On the capitalism side, we're talking free market. Those are the basic big picture differences that I want you to understand. Why do we look at economic indicators? Why is unemployment? Why do we care how many people are unemployed in this country? Well, they tell us something about, if you can't get a job, that we have a serious problem. If you want to stop and think about what was the unemployment rate during the Great Depression in the 1930s, is that nearly half the people in this country couldn't get a job. So we had soup lines, we had all kinds of issues going on. And I want to ask you, what is the unemployment rate today? What is it today? And I believe it's under 4%. So it's a good economic indicator. It's not the only thing, but this is why we follow these trends. I think that's all I'm going to cover at this moment, because I don't think you can absorb more than that. Okay. All right. We'll be back in touch. Take care.